Assalamu alaikum everyone. Welcome to the Muslim Watch, a platform that aims to articulate the Muslim voices. Today we have two very special guests joining with us for a conversation on the past, the present and the future of Muslim politics in India and its relation with the socio-economy of the community. Our first guest is a long-time politician from Indian National Congress and former Union Minister of Minority Affairs and also ex-Deputy Chairman of Rajya Sabha, Mr. K. Rahman Khan. Mr. Khan's recommendations during his tenure as Chairman, Karnataka Minorities Commission resulted in 4% reservation for minorities in the state government services and educational institutions. He's also in the middle of authoring his new book relevant to today's topic. Welcome to the Muslim Watch, Mr. Khan. Our second guest is a Muslim thinker and an Islamic scholar who has authored more than 20 books, including on issues about Indian Muslims, Muslims in the world, Islamic paradigms of sciences and society, and authored a roadmap in 2011, Muslim Vision of Secular India, Destination and Roadmap. Dr. Javed Jamil is also currently the chair in Islamic Studies and Research at Yenapoya University, Mangalore. Welcome to the Muslim Watch, Dr. Jamil.
Assalamu alaikum.
So, as we know that India is in the worst of its political, social, infrastructural and economic crisis. There's a massive increase in violence against minorities, especially Muslims and Dalits. The economy was in shambles even before the COVID crisis, but after the crisis, the condition has worsened to an unimaginable level. The migrant crisis caused by a sudden and unplanned nationwide lockdown, massive unemployment crisis, and a GDP that fell to a negative 24%, the largest fall in the world, is among the many challenges that we are facing as a country. But along these, the Muslims also face a systemic and structural Islamophobia in the form of politics of hate, deprivation and communal violence. The anti-CAA protests and the subsequent witch hunting of the Muslim activists, the verdicts on the Babri Masjid case and the anti-Muslim pogrom in northeast Delhi add to the growing list of historical injustices against the Muslim community in India. In this interview, we will discuss the politics of past, its accomplishments and its failures, the disillusionment and alienations of Muslims from a particular brand of politics, and their desire for a true representation in the democratic structure of this nation. The theme of the interview is therefore the past, the present and the future of Muslim politics in India. With that in mind, I start with Mr. Khan. Mr. Khan, after the independence, by the call of then prominent Muslim activists, including Maulana Azad, the Muslims of India chose to give up their political representation in favor of socio-economic security as promised by Nehru and his colleagues from the Congress party. More than 70 years from then, the community faces several dilemmas and paradoxes. But one opinion which has become very common, held by a significant amount of Muslims in India, is that the Congress party and other secular and socialist parties have somehow failed to deliver to their promises to the Indian Muslims along with other minorities. Where do you think, the secular politics have failed, if at all? Mr. Khan.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jamil, for organizing this interview on particularly a subject which is very relevant to the Muslims of India, the past, the present and the future of the Muslims in India. You see, it is a wide subject. It is very difficult to find out the reasons and the present status of the Indian Muslims. It is a very vast subject, as you said. But anyhow, we'll try to find out what was our past, what is our present, what should be our future. What was our past? The past everybody knows. Everybody, we are proud of that we have ruled the Muslims. It is not the Muslims who ruled. Some kings, Muslim kings have ruled for 200 to 300 years, and then we had a glorious past, this and all that, and our leaders, both religious and political leaders, participated in the freedom movement, and all this is our past. And then what happened, as you rightly said, 70 years we have completed more than 70 years we have completed our independence. We were assured, so many things are assured. Pakistan was created. and it is all individual acts. Let us understand who are leaders. They are individuals, and the entire community support them or go with them because they believe in them. But let us remember those individuals are individuals, whether it is Gandhi, whether it is Nehru, whether it is Sardar Patel, or Maulana Azad, Jinnah, Liaqati, whoever it is, they are individual and they think individually, and they develop a cult or a thinking that this is right, and they want everybody to accept that is right. This is followers accept it. This is what happens right from the beginning. History says that. Now, what is history? History is after the event happens, we have to analyze history. Whether the actions were relevant, whether the action was good, and what will be its effect. Such individual decisions affect on the entire society, because sometimes it is section of the society, or sometimes it is society as a whole. Now partition, whether it's a big debate, partition, who is responsible? Now today, the Indian Muslims the finger is pointed towards Indian Muslims. Hatred is created with the Indian Muslims because they feel, the Hindu community here feels that we are responsible, Muslims are responsible for Pakistan. But really, are we? Is the question which is our past. We have not examined it. So Pakistan happened. Partition took place. It is ego of Jinnah, ego of Nehru, ego of Gandhi. Otherwise, we were living for thousands, hundreds of years. We could have lived for hundreds of years. Similarly, so for the egoists of the leaders, they created a difference between the communities. This is the past. And then, as you said, we believed again when the constitution was framed. We believed which is the party which is leading the country, freedom movement? It is Congress. We had no other party to even depend. Partition had become a reality. When partition had become a reality, all the Muslims never chose to go to Pakistan. Only 60% went and 40% remained in India. So this 40% relied on a political party which is going to lead us. They made several assurances. In fact, I want every Muslim to read the debate, constitutional debate, which has taken place on 26th May 1948, when the separate electorate provision in the constitution was amended. And what happened, what type of apprehensions which were expressed in the constitutional debate by some of the people, some of the Muslim leaders, and how we were assured that we have to trust them. We trusted our Muslim representatives in the Constituent Assembly. They have betrayed. Now we can reveal, we can even assess, because we have the right to assess what is their role, who are the members of the Muslim members of the Constituent Assembly, whether they were right. Again, they were individuals. They were tightened by the party politics, and then their idea, their decisions was reflected on all the Muslims of India today. No less a person than Ambedkar, who said, yes, there should be there should be a reservation. There will be a separate electorate for the minorities. Otherwise, the democracy is shame. In fact, we should go back to history. In 1930, Ambedkar was representing the Round Table Conference as an individual, as the representatives of the depressed sections of the society of India. He makes a beautiful speech, which is what is happening today for the Muslim community. He predicted as early as 1930 in the Round Table Conference. In fact, I would like to read some of what he has said in the Round Table Conference. His views on safeguard for the minorities and ST/ST from 1930 are very significant. Addressing the second session of the Roundtable Conference pleading for depressed class in London on 31st December 1930, he says, I agree that in some respect the position of the depressed class is similar to that of the other minorities in India. The depressed class, along with other minorities, fear that under any future constitution of India, by which a majority rule will be established, and there can be no shadow of doubt that the majority rule will be the rule of Orthodox Hindus. There is great danger of that majority with the Orthodox Hindus' belief and prejudices contravening the dictates of justice, equalities, and good conscience. There is a great danger that the minorities may be discriminated against either in the legislation or administration or other public rights of the citizens, and therefore it is necessary to safeguard the positions of the minority in such a manner that the discrimination which is feared shall not take place. From that point of view, however, what is asked is that the minority shall have representation in the legislature and in the executive, that they shall have representation in the public service in the country, and that the constitution shall provide that, therefore, shall impose on future legislature of India both central and provisional certain limitation on the legislative powers which will prevent the majorities from abusing their legislative power, which is in such a manner as enact laws which will create discrimination between one citizen and another. I say these circumstances, the danger of discrimination is common to all minorities, as I represent of the depressed class, join with demand with other minorities of this thing. See this speech. This is word by word what he has said in 1930 is happening today, and we are facing. And the Muslims are living in dream. Today, the Muslim leadership, the religious leadership, the intellectual leadership, the political leadership have not awakened. They are still sleeping on hope, and they have not realized this. We were warned long back. We have not realized. We have not read history. We have not.
So, Mr. Khan, one thing that is coming out of what you're saying is that, as a long-time congressman also, it seems that you believe that historically also the leaders who were envisioning the future of India, collectively or separated, they knew that in a collective India, Muslims would not be able to thrive the way the congressmen or the other political parties are talking about. So, as a congressman, do you feel that as somebody who has also been a minority affairs minister, do you think that the party politics subverts the Muslimness? Or, for example, K. Rahman Khan wants to come up with a certain policy and it is advantageous to a certain minority, and it can change the power politics. Do you think the party itself holds you from taking that position? Is the politics of the Congress insufficient to deal with the politics of the Muslims in India? Is that what you're saying?
No. What I'm saying is, I give little importance to the political thinking, what happened in politics, why the Congress party, whether Congress party has stood up to its promises and all that. This is one side of the whole thing. Now we are discussing our past, our present. Now I am talking to the present. The Muslim, see, we can blame anybody. That is what we are doing it from last 70 years. We relied on somebody else, and then they betrayed, then we do something, and then we say, put all these things. I am posing a bigger question, a larger question. What had happened to our community, our leaders, our religious leaders? Why did they sleeping? That is, you see, India is not only Hindus. Among the Hindus, there are several. It is a diverse society. There are different societies. Each society, in spite of they being Hindus, they being majority, if you go back and study each sections of the Indian society, they have done their homework very well. They have not depend on the government. They are not depend on the promises of their leaders, no doubt. They have trusted democracy, they have participated in democracy, but they have not left at that. They have struggled, they have planned the future of the society, their community, and how we should take way forward. Because it is a diverse society, let us understand. So my question, larger question is, we should post all this to Muslim leadership, Muslim religion, because you know that among Muslims, 80% of the Muslim thought is controlled by religious leadership. It is not you and I, not a political MLA or MP or a minister. He doesn't control the thoughts of the Indian Muslims. It is the religious leadership which controls 80% of the thought, who can provoke for a small thing, but a political leader cannot. So let us not, we cannot find a solution for our present and future if we depend on political party, but including Congress. Though I am a congressman, my party, I don't trust that Congress has also not discharged its responsibility, is undertaking its safeguard. Congress has not done it. I have no hesitation in saying it.
So, Dr. Jameel, what Mr. Khan is saying, that the onus of responsibility does not rest on a single party. It should also have been the case after the independence, that the responsibility should have been taken by the religious leaders, community leaders, civil rights movements. Now, being a student of politics, economics and philosophy, there are two strands I believe in. One, the state has to play the role. The other, community also has to be affirmative in taking actions. You cannot rely on a machinery which you know yourself that has a power structure which will alienate you if you will not participate in that. So, Dr. Jameel, you wrote the Muslim Vision of Secular India and Destination and Roadmap, and you've also argued in that there is a problem in the leadership also, from Congress, other social parties, BJP, RSS, but because the Muslims have also not taken their issues like economy, like ideology, like social issues, a triple talaq masla can be taken up by RSS, BJP in a parliament. Why could not have the religious leaders, which is already a problem, could have taken, that issue, taken care of that issue and moved on for a politics of education, politics of, creating new avenues for employment. So where do you think that the state made the limitations, and where do you think the community itself is responsible?
It has been a multiple failure, no doubt. There is failure on every possible front. There is very high failure on the front of the government of India. Whoever is the party, whichever party was in power, it has been, most of the time it has been Congress, but it has also been other parties also, and none of them has cared for the true rights of Muslims. But apart from them, definitely Muslims have failed at multiple levels. For example, as Mr. Rahman Khan is saying, the number one is religious leaders. Religious leaders have presented Islam only as a theology. They do not understand Islam's holistic paradigm. Islam is a religion which is not just theology, it is also sociology, it is also economics, it is also about health issues, it is about everything. But they were always interested only in theological part. So as Mr. Rahman Khan is saying, right, they are the people who are being followed, who are followed most by Muslim community. But you hear the khutbahs in Jummah, they will not be talking about the Muslim issues. They will not be talking about the issues of the society as a whole. They will again be just discussing about Qayamat and about somebody said below the earth or above the or in the sky. They are not talking about the real true world issues related to Muslims as well. Because as I have argued in my book, that in India Muslims have multiple statuses. Number one, legally and constitutionally, they are called minority. As ideological level, because Hindus are the second largest community, so Muslims are the second biggest majority as far as ideological level is concerned. At social level, they are part of the majority, because India's majority are deprived. India's majority is in trouble, is in problems. They are not getting what they should get. So they have all these statuses. But Muslims Leadership also failed because they always projected Muslims only as a minority. They could not realize that Muslims are also second biggest majority at the ideological level and a part of the majority at the social level. They hardly ever, even now, they do not say a word about what is happening in the country as a whole. National issues, socio-economic policies of the country are not at all. There is no Muslim voice, there is no organization which is talking about the socio-economic policies of the nation as a whole. They come into picture only when there is an attack on a specific Muslim issue. They are not concerned about. Then Muslim intellectuals are also, for example, we have Aligarh movement, we have the people from Aligarh, but Aligarh people, unfortunately, now within next 15 years, they will be seen very active in holding 17th October Sayyid birthday of Sir Sayyid. So they are always interested in Sir Sayyid dinner, but they have not been able to plan an intellectual movement that could have galvanized Muslims as a whole. So this is the problem with intellectuals also. Political leaders are always interested in their very limited issues. Political empowerment in India of Muslims was not just that Muslims should have a certain number of seats in assemblies or parliament, but it means a much bigger thing. Muslims should be in a position to raise the issues, not to just react, but also must play a proactive role. They must be able to raise issues which are important for the country as a whole, also for the masses, including Muslims. Of course, they have the right. They must protect their own rights, but they are also. Yeah,
but surely,
they are
Mr.
also part
Jamil,
of the-
I would like to add, because as a student of JNU, and from the past year, so many things have happened throughout the country: anti-CAA movement, Delhi pogrom, and so many other things. Noting that, I see that the Muslims and the Dalits included, they have been pushed so far towards the wall that they do not have the time or the capacity to think outside their security issues. So in a way that they're in a vicious circle of poverty, of non-representation, of intellectual bankruptcy. Even the seeing the organizations work also, Jamiyat, Jamaat, all other organizations, even they are somehow not able to handle the issues in a way that they have a larger idea of what should be the taxation system in the country. If until and unless the resources are redistributed, there cannot be an political representation. But surely, as a sociology student, it also plays part. The state apparatus enables the economy to flourish. Dalits have got representation, but another interesting paradox is that even Dalit, after getting the affirmative action, they could not come out of their economic deprivation. So what is the reason? Sometimes most of the
they are being trapped from all sides, actually, because there is a certain group in the country which we understand as Hindutva lobby. They are always doing everything to deprive Muslims. You are seeing the example of the UP government that for Hindu festivals they are spending crores and crores, but there is nothing for Muslim festivals. They have whatever was available in UP for Muslims. He's trying to give away everything, scrap everything, and Muslims are getting trapped from all sides. Plus, Muslim leadership, again, they have failed to develop a holistic model of empowerment, which I am talking in my book. There should be empowerment. It is a multi-dimensional approach. They should have a multi-dimensional approach with distribution of work in different organizations.
We will come to the future of what will be the Muslim vision. But Mr. Khan, so coming to the present, I find that the structural event that changed the politics of India was the Anna movement, in a way that it delegitimized the secular polity and it paved the way to a Hindutva far-right movement to be legitimized in the consciousness of the population. And that movement was mostly led by the so-called progressives and liberals, and they could not foresee by destroying the Congress party in a way that, the legitimacy gone, they also brought a bigger devil into the political picture. So, I mean, how do you see that in hindsight? How do you see that these movements, and the rise of Hindutva politics from Anna movement, and how has it affected the Muslim politics till now? And the rise of Hindutva politics from Anna movement, and how has it affected the Muslim politics till now?
You see, Anna movement, basically the people of the country were given that they are fighting against corruption. You see, any movement for that matter, whether it is Anna movement, to take any movement, this movements which are created by the social leaders, intellectuals, they are theoretically all right, but they are not the practical people. None of the people who are involved in Anna movement are ever knew, ever analyzed. For example, they took 2G. I am just citing an example which became what do you say? It has affected the entire UPA. It was affected the entire UPA. 2G. What is 2G? 2G is not. It may be a corruption with some individuals which the law is there to take part. But how the people were mesmerized. AG, the Controller and Auditor General, CAG, stated in his report that by not taking this particular decision by the government, which is a sovereign government, they can take decisions according to their decision. Had they taken this decision, had they called action route, they would have got so much of money. Now having taken the other route, which was already existence, time immemorial, whether it is in BJP also has done, other government then, and he presumed losses, said it is a presumed loss, no loss has been taken. How the people were mesmerized by this Anna movement and the opposition is that the Congress, the scam is 1,75,000 crore has been, the public treasury has been deprived of that. It is just a imaginative figure created by a CAG, which report itself says it is a presumptive loss. But they made it, this intellectual, so-called intellectuals. So far they are not able to find out what is the loss. So this type of things happens. Take for example, Babri Masjid movement. What is Babri Masjid movement? What is the significance of Babri Masjid? The Muslim Personal Law Board, we respect all the leaders who are there. In it was established in 1973. What has it given to the Muslim as such a powerful body? Have they ever addressed all these issues except Shariat issue? Is our existence? Is the Indian Muslim existence that triple talaq? All these, some of these traditions, what we call riwayats, they have nothing to do with Quran and Hadith. But these greater religious leaders misled the entire Muslim community. How did Baron, who is responsible? How did a party, we are talking about Anna movement, why should we not talk about the Babri Masjid issue? From 2 members in the parliament, they have become 324. Are we introspecting? Are we looking to the future, our mistake? Anna movement is one thing. But now that we are discussing the Muslim issue, what all these things the community got from these issues? Did it benefited? Did they protect the Shariat? Triple Talaq bill is passed. Had we not taken, the community was not capable enough of deciding these things. This is all
But-
archaic laws and
but
archaic
sir,
riwayats which has no relevance in Quran and Sunnah.
it can
Who
also
has,
be
nobody
argued
is,
that the Muslim Personal
and
Law
we
Board
have
and
developed
these
a
organizations,
that we
they
cannot
are
question our religious leaders.
the structure has been built as such that they're going to deal with traditions and riwayat. You know, but as Congress or as RJD, JDU, or well, any party representing the Muslim aspect, is it not there? They should come up with a certain organization, a certain secretariat level NGO or something which can actually try to communicate all these. The Sachar Committee report, the Congress government released it, but it has also been argued that it has not been implemented. As an organization in which a lot of Muslim politicians have participated,
it has not been implemented.
Okay,
As an
we'll take only
organization in which a
small
lot of
answer for this,
Muslim
because I don't want the issue to
politicians have
build upon
participated.
more on the
Okay,
past, because the debate
we'll
is
take
more
only
about the future.
small
So
answer
we
for this
all
because
know
I don't
all
want
these things,
the issue
but,
to build upon
my
more on the
contention
past,
is, as you know,
because the
as
debate
a
is more
Muslim
about the
student in
future.
2020,
So we all know all
I
these
feel
things,
that I,
but,
as a Muslim,
my
in a
contention is,
parliamentary
as
democracy,
as a Muslim student in
should there
2020,
be the
I
understanding of
feel
secularism,
that I, as a
wherein
Muslim,
I, as a practicing
in a
Muslim,
parliamentary
can
democracy,
take up a position in the
should there
parliament
be
by
the understanding
contesting,
of secularism,
not
wherein I, as
from
a
the banner
practicing
of
Muslim,
a large
can take up a position
organization,
in the parliament by
secular party,
contesting,
socialist party,
not
whatsoever.
by
Why
from the
is
banner
that
of a
the
large
burden of secular
organization,
comes
secular
even
party,
not just
socialist
from the
party,
Hindutva
whatsoever?
brigade,
Why
even from
is that
for example,
the
if
burden
for
of
example
secular
Asaduddin Owaisi
comes
is
even not
contesting
just
in
from the
Bihar,
Hindutva
so
brigade,
RJD
even
would
from the
say that
for example,
he's
if for example
vote cutter.
Asaduddin Owaisi is
Why that burden? And
contesting in
even
Bihar,
Congress
so RJD would
participates in
say
that.
that he's
Why not,
a vote cutter?
without that
Why that
participation, do you
burden? And
believe,
even
why should there be
Congress
only binaries in politics?
participates in
Why
that.
not a Muslim can
without
participate
that
effectively
participation,
in
do
the
you believe
politics?
why should there be
Within
only
this nation?
binaries
This
in
is a
politics?
question which I
Why
asked from
not?
both
Why not
Mr.
a
Khan
Muslim can
and Mr.
participate
Javed Jamil, because
effectively in
that
the
is something I
politics,
want to
within
understand
this
as a
nation?
student.
This is a
I don't have
question
a
which
clear
I asked
answer
from
to
both
that.
Mr. Khan and Mr. Javed Jamil, because that is something I want to understand as a student. I don't have a clear answer to that.
I am very happy that you have posed this question. First of all, we are in a constitutional democracy. Let us read our constitution. We are equal citizens. We are not special citizens. The constitution nowhere the Muslim word is there in the constitution. The secular word was added later on by an amendment. But the basic constitution is a secular constitution by understanding right from the beginning, day one. But secularism means the entire responsibility is not on the government. The government, you as a citizen, you get your rights under the fundamental rights. Article 14, Article 15, Article 16. And beyond that, Article 19, 21 and all that you take. So you get in the constitutional right, when you talk about the government is not only for the Muslims or a particular section of the society and all that. Yes, all that has to become under the Article 14, 15 and 16. Beyond that, you have nothing. So you have to establish, when you come to Article 15 and Article 16, you are unequally treated, you are discriminated, then only government has only a special provision to take affirmative action. So why our fault is, first of all, we are depending too much on political parties. We are depending too much on the constitution. Constitution, whether it is religious freedom, you see, let us understand. Now we say we have absolute religious right. The Article 25 and 26 is the weakest articles in the constitution, which start subject to that moral turpitude and subject to safety and all that, then only your rights are come. So let us, my point is, the political parties, now we are questioning, today one party comes, the other party comes, the other party comes, Congress has been, some parties are called secular parties. The Muslims create so many parties. Is there a way out? Can you and I, as Muslims, Are you an emerging leader? You are as a thinker of the Muslim. Have you any solution for our own problems? Can we seek our solution from the political parties? They are opportunists. Let me be very clear. They are opportunists. They want power. They want to come to power. They will use it. Tomorrow, BJP knows very well that by polarizing, we can come to power. Congress now says, you must be knowing, this Congress which says, oh, we are only treated as a Muslim party. They openly say that we are treated as a Muslim party. That is why we are losing it. We have lost here also with supporting Congress. There also we have lost it. So my point, Mr. Jamil, is that we have to give up depending on others. We have to stand as because you are a youngster, you are emerging. You represent the future. We represent the present and the past. So don't commit the mistake which the present generation, your leadership, whether the political leadership, whether intellectual leadership, the religious leadership, we have committed. We have committed several blunders. Because each one of us suffers from ego. I will put your question. Is there a need for so many Jamaats? Tablighi Jamaat, Jamaat-e-Ulama Hind, 2 parts there, Jamaat-e-Islami, and political parties, 4 or 5 political parties. We know democracy. We cannot have our own political party. We cannot get power without that. All that who can build the bell to the cattle? Who can build? So this question first we should pose to us. Why are you posing to others? You have to presume that you have no friends. You are like any other persons. We are not in power. We are in a majoritarian state. You see, if you have the time to read, there a new, very beautiful book has come. The
So, Mr.
majoritarian
Khan,
state.
I
How
wanted the
Hindu
debate to come to
nationalism
this
is
point
changing
because
India.
you have all candidly said that until and unless Muslim articulates its problem from the perspective of not oppression or deprivation, but from the perspective of contribution, there are 2 things. One, Sachar committee has also highlighted, Congress initiated that process, that there is deprivation, and as you rightly pointed out, constitution, when realized that there is deprivation which is structural, affirmative action can come in. But then you're arguing that action can be placed, but you cannot rely on the political parties because political parties operate on the idea of power itself. You have to take, and you have to be in a position where you can bargain. So Dr. Jamil, I will come to you. What I realized from this discussion is that there is a fundamental limit to the idea that others can represent you equally the way you can represent. This is a parliamentary democracy. You will have to take up the cause of the representation of the economy, and you will have to somehow build organizations, institutions which can articulate that perspective in economy and other fields. So how do you think that solution can arise?
No, we have to understand. I do not totally agree with Mr. Khan that political parties should not be blamed. We have to blame and we have to question them on their failure in protecting Muslims and protecting their rights. But our responsibility is definitely much higher. We have to take responsibility. We have to learn the art of the strategy that is necessary for a successful politicking. For successful politics, we have to realize what is the structure of the Indian democracy and what is the structure of Indian population. For example, I have argued that people normally tend to think there is a majority and there is a minority in India, but I tend to think that Indian people are constituted of 5 minorities, none of which is a majority. One of them is Hindutva, upper caste. Number 2 is secular upper caste. Number 3 is OBC. Number 4 is Dalit. And number 5 are minorities, of which Muslims are the major contributors. So these 5 are politically, these 5 constituents are extremely important. But we have to learn how to at least group ourselves with at least 3 of them. If we try to, for example, we have failed totally to bring Dalits with us, because when Dalit leaders, they when CAA protest was there, then Dalit leaders were there courting arrest in Delhi. But when Dalit issue is there, no Muslim, hardly if there is any statement, but nobody takes any active participation in Dalit politics in the for the rights of the Dalit. So why should Dalit believe you? So that is we have to learn the art of the politics to make it successful, and we have to understand that politics is not the only thing. We have to not only ideological empowerment, because we are facing the onslaught from the Hindutva lobby. They are trying to defame Muslims and Islam, and they are pinning every blame of Indian failure on Muslim community. So we have to learn the art of countering them, of countering their argument in an aggressive intellectual way. But at the same time, we have to learn how we can combine with other Hindu groups, Dalits and OBCs and others, and we have to understand the electoral politics also. Because if, for example, it is normally said that when Owaisi fights an election in a certain constituency, so it's normally aside from Hyderabad, what it happens that it is more beneficial for the BJP than for the secular parties. It happens. So we have to understand this political structure also. And ideologically, you may say, no, if this is right, we have to assert ourselves, we have to assert ourselves, we should have a political party. But in politics, you have to make a balance between the long-term interest.
But the problem is that for example, if there is RJD or JDU or Congress for that matter, so even in seats where the Muslim population is high, and there has been topics of delimitation on such a committee report also and further reports also, even then there also the Muslim political parties are not allowed to contest in a way that they're labeled as vote cutters, and there is a kind of a hate politics that emerges out of it. But until and unless the argument is that in those seats where Muslims can win, if they do not win those seats from the perspective of Muslims, so they cannot be in a bargaining position to ask for better rights in the parliament. One is this debate. The other debate is, what I'm understanding is, there are three different sets of people within Muslims. One says that Muslims should be not be taking part in politics. They should instead focus on education, instead focus on empowerment. There is other stand which I feel is isolationist. They think that you should not engage with secular politics parties at all. That point is also for me problematic, in a sense where you can win, you win, but you have to also come up with solutions. You have to understand the electoral demography, and you have to be in a position to bargain. You can
we have to understand that politics is not just about elections. Unfortunately, our politics starts only 3 or 4 months before the elections are either at the country level or
what
in
is the solution for that level. We have diagnosed the problem.
The solution is that we have to understand that raising political issues is one thing and winning election is another thing. These two things have to be separated. On the one hand, we have to keep raising issues at the national level, and we have to come together with other groups like Dalits or OBCs or other deprived classes for that purpose. But when election approaches, then we have to think in terms of what elections are. We cannot ignore any part. Political empowerment is essential, economic empowerment is essential, social empowerment is essential, ideological empowerment is essential. None of them can be left aside. All things are important. This is another matter that we have to distribute the work at a different level in different organizations. Muslim political leaders should understand that when elections approach, of course they should be thinking about the elections. But there is a lot of gap between two elections. In between, they start sleeping.
But Mr. Khan is arguing that exact thing, that even the leadership the religious leadership, they're also centers of power. They don't. Why should madrasa not be modernized? It is not for the theological reason. It is for the reason that somebody who knows English better would come up and would disrupt the hierarchy of politics or power within that institution. So
Unfortunately, this is the case because all of us, we are inbuilt like this. Okay, we have to be selfish. So these madrasa people want that their supremacy should prevail. So they do not want an intellectual movement build up within their.
but that
within
same
their
problem is
circle.
with elite
They think-
also. But I will come to
because when I was talking about applied Islamics, it happened in Hyderabad last year. Okay, when I was talking about applied Islamics and certain very important high level religious leaders were present there, they were blunt in telling me, Dr. Saab, you keep आप अपना अप्लाइड इस्लाम अपने पास रखिए, हमें इसकी जरूरत नहीं है. हमारे पास जो 500 साल से, जो हजारों साल से, जो 1000 साल से जो फिक्र की किताबों में लिखा है, हमारे लिए वो काफी है. Now they do not understand the simple fact that Islam is not just for Muslims and Islam is for the whole world, and Islam provides solutions for everything. So unless we understand the world, unless we understand the modern subjects, we cannot present a solution to the world. But they do not understand this. They just want to maintain supremacy, and that is the major problem. And it is also the problem of intellectuals that they do not deal with the religious leaders in a way that they can come together. This also, the problem is on both sides. They take hard stands.
So, Mr. Khan, what we have understood is everybody has failed in their own right, and everybody is somehow successful. Like the Anna movement, we should not think that everything is wrong in some place, and we destroy a structure that had some privileges also. We should have, like a Burkean revolution, we should have tried to make it better and also come up with our own polity also somehow. But the question I want to raise to you is that you being a part of the power politics, you being somebody who's navigated that power politics, worked in minority affairs, how do you think all these things are good in books? They're ideas, they're something, which should be implemented. But how to do that? What is the initiatives? How should they be done? How should student movements take up issues? Somebody as a student, we participated in the anti-CAA movement. We saw the Northeast Delhi pogrom. We tried to do some work there by distributing food and these kind of resources. But when it comes to understanding the politics itself, I see that most of the activists of this generation, my generation, they have become isolationist, moving from one extreme to the other. I don't certainly believe that the Congress is the only solution. I believe that there are certain things that Congress can do better, but there are other things that a Muslim political party can do. So you comment on your way forward, because you are writing that book, and we want to understand how do you see the way forward for Muslims.
You are right, Mr. Jamil. I want to ask, we have been discussing from last almost 45 minutes. We are always addressing we as Muslim. I want to know who is that we in Muslim community. Are we an integrated society, Muslim society, with a leadership during partition? The entire Muslims, I can't say entire Muslims, a large sections of the Muslims came under the leadership of Nursi Jinnah in the Muslim League. Is that situation prevalent today? No. That was for a cause, for a particular. Similarly, I have gone through, I have been a long experience, right, from last 50 years I have seen. We start certain movement, then the entire community get integrated on a certain issue, which is, again, we have to blame on non-issue in my view, whether it is personal law, whether it is Babri Masjid, whether it is Aligarh movement, whether it is a Urdu movement. I have seen all this. On a particular issue, we get integrated, we join together, we get emotionally charged and take up that issue momentarily. Then we forget. Where is that unity? How to bring that back? Again, everything you have to go. Yes, Islam is in danger. Shariat is in danger. The whole 99% of the community get together. Or if there is some other issues like Babri Masjid, whether Shabanu's case, or all you as an intellectual decide what is this on these non-issues which we have made an emotional issue and integrated the community. Today we are talking we are who are we. I am an individual. Again, I am considered as a political leader, but I have my own constituency. Somebody has their own constituency. Jamaat-e-Islami has their own constituency. Jamiatul Ulama has their own thing. Everybody is suffering from ego and they want to build that. The Jamiatul Ulama says that we are right, we will be leaders of the community. Our say will prevail. Jamaat-e-Islami says we are right, we are intellectual, this thing, our thing. Tabligh Jamaat says we are not bothered about what all you are there. Allah upar, Allah hai, niche khabar hai. They are only that. So, अब इनको integrate कौन करेगा? Political party करेगी, RJD करेगी, उनकी जिम्मेदारी है. No. So how do we bring this we into one this thing? See, for example, take for Hinduism, right? They are upper caste, this thing, I don't believe in that. But when on one issue they have integrated Hindu versus Muslims. Because there is a past history we have created, partition, hatred, what happened, atrocities during, all that will be again reminded and they get it. Today,
But sir, that is the same problem like Babri. They are also organizing in issues of isolation and.
I am not denying that. I am not denying it. They are successful. We are not successful. They have come under one leadership. RSS now today, whatever, whether a person will say that he's an RSS man or not, I believe that 80% of the Hindus, they may not be RSS karyakartas, but they believe in the ideology. Now, recent controversy of the IAS and all that central services, the RSS, it is there on the thing, they training, and 60% of the persons who are passing from the central services are trained under the RSS Shaka. They have a step central service. So they will all go with the bureaucracy with that ideology. What I am saying is they have something. We have not even, I don't mind. OAC takes the whole leadership and let us assemble only on OAC. Let us supplement Jamiatul Ulama. And why so? How can we, who represent the Muslims? To see, as you said, you are a politician, you have represented the government, you have seen the I am part of the cabinet, all that I have seen. But I have learned one thing. Your strength is in your ये जो इस्तेमा जो बोलते हैं, इस्तेमायत में ताकत है जो अल्लाह ताला कुरान में कहा. You demonstrate that and give up the biggest evil God has said is ana, which is there in every one of us. That is human fitrat hai wo. But that doesn't mean that we will, that should overtake it. That has overtaken it. Whether it is alim, highest alim, this is also there. So these things we have to first address within the community. What I'm saying is, we are citizens of this country. We have democracy. We will actively participate. Everything that is fine. That is a separate question. To achieve success there, we have to then strengthen here. Without this, without strengthening this, if they see you are scattered, they will take, anybody will take advantage. Let us not say the political parties are just like anything is a statutory bodies. They can be punished. Now we Javed Jamil Sahib rightly said we have to question. Whom do you question? Yes, question. But who do you get the answer? You have got to question them. You have got a statutory right. Question some political party. You don't have statutory. It is your belief. So let us. That is why in the beginning itself, this is a wider question. And now you said, what is the way forward? Way forward is we have to understand the diversity of the country. We have not studied other communities, at least the intellectual community has not studied how Other communities have structured their development despite they having 100 years back, the community in Karnataka, which is today controlling 30 and 40% post in the government with only 16 to 17% population, they have structured the future of their community 100 years back. They have created the infrastructure. They have created the human resources. Today, with their control, we have no future thinking. We are no, we are only because we are so much religion, Islam, and our political life has been so much attached that we don't think that we can make in a democracy. What is democracy? What is others' right? What is my right? He said, our alims only knows whatever they say, the whole country should follow, everybody follow. Shariat is important, whether it is according to constitution or not according to constitution. Here, mindset ko where do we find the solution? We'll find solution in the political parties. They are not bothered about you. Tomorrow, if you are not a power, if you are not a balancing power, and that we have seen now the balancing for 70 years we were balancing power. Somehow we were doing it. Today, BJP has proved that we are no more a balancing power. So, let us find a solution, Mr. Jamil, within us. First, let us हम जैसा कहते हैं कि पहले घर अपना घर सुधार लो, बस दूसरों के घर की तरफ हम उंगली उठाएं.
So, Dr. Jamil, what Mr. Khan is saying, that sort your own house first before peeping in others' house. So, there's an interesting point that he raised, that one of the biggest contradictions that a Muslim faces today. So this will be the last question because we're already reaching a 1 hour mark, but I will ask last question. I would say that there is a contradiction that we as Muslims, practicing Muslims, young Muslims face. So most of the my contemporary colleagues that I have connected to as activists, I have seen that there are different strands of understanding of politics itself. Some saying that until unless there would be a khilafah, there would not be something. Something that there has to be composite nationalism of the sort that the elder Madni developed the idea. Something that Maududi's theocratic, meritocratic democracy is the idea. You know, these are different strands of understanding of the polity in which most of the times I see that Muslims are not able to engage with the democracy. But what I personally feel when reading the Charter of Medina, I see that there are three models of governance within Islam. One is when the Prophet sent few of his followers to Abyssinia, where the larger majority was ruling, a good majority ruler, and there were personal laws, and you were a very small minority. You were being ruled, but your personal laws were protected, but your civil laws and your criminal laws were sorted out by that state. Then there was this Hijrat of Medina, in which there was a bargaining power. You were with Jews, you were with Christians. There was a constitutional framework, which is very similar to what we find our relation within India. And the final was that final Medina government of the Khilafah, in which the majority had converted already. There was never an imposition. The Prophet never himself ever imposed. You know, there was this case of Hagia Sophia a few days back, and I was seeing that people were not able to understand its link between the Babri and the Hagia. Now, I told them that even when the Prophet took the Kaaba, the community itself had surrendered. The ethnic majority had changed. They did not believe in a certain ideal. So that area belonged to them, and then they said that do it, whatever is right. So are we in a position? We're not in the position of Abyssinia. We're not in a position of Khilafah. And our own history from the Prophet himself. We don't have to see the history of Ottomans, the history of Pakistan, anything. We find it in our literature that the secular is within Quran. So how do you think that we can convince these?
As you said, we are not in the late Madinite stage. We are either in the early Madinite period or in the late Makkan period. In between them, we are in minority. We are not in a majority position. So we have to make a bigger planning. We have to understand that there are short-term aims and there are long-term aims. Long-term aims, of course, we must have in mind that ultimately what is the ideology of Islam. That ideology ultimately has to prevail, but that is a long-term strategy. Short-term strategy, that strategy will not work at the short stage. we have to understand that as short term, we are living as a part of a country which has multiple types of people, multiple types of political groups, and as I said earlier, that there are 5 groups. Out of those five groups, 4 groups belong to Hindu religion, and that Hindutva lobby is trying to utilize to use the religion Hinduism for uniting those 4 communities. Now we have to fear, we are failing to counter them. Now we have to learn how to counter them. And one of the ways will be that we have to talk in terms of uniting all religions against common social problems. So this way we can certainly have certain Hindus with us, and then we have to try to win over Dalits, over the issues which are related to them, because they are also feeling deprived from certain parts of Hindu communities. So they are also facing violence. So, but we have to learn the art of politicking. Politicking is not just electioneering. Electioneering and politicking are 2 different things. Politics is the ability to raise issues, to make the government take certain steps, to make the people in general, the community, to work in a particular way.
Now the farmer protests also, Muslims have not been able to articulate that the farmer issue was
that is
their
the
issue
problem.
also.
So we have to learn how to coordinate our efforts at multiple levels. Multidimensional effort is necessary, but there has to be a coordination, and there has to be a coordination between the different organizations which Rahman Khan Sahib is talking about. Jamiat Ulama, Jamaat Islami, unfortunately they are not able to integrate. They do not want to sit together. Tabligh Jamaat thinks that they are supreme. They will be the inheritors of paradise. So this is how people think. Now everybody has to learn that there are certain groups which have their specialties in different ways. Now those specialties are important, but they have to combine together for a larger cause. And larger cause is educational empowerment. Larger cause is empowerment of women within Islamic framework. Larger cause is political empowerment, not just in terms of the seats won, but in terms of the ability to raise different issues at the national level. And those issues must include the issues related to community and the issues related to the masses in general, and the issues related to the nation. So all these, and we have to develop how to economically empower ourselves, because that is one area which we have been forgetting, which we have been concentrating much more. When I started my deliberations with Mr. K. Rahman Khan around 15 years back, that was actually the issue. Mr. K. Rahman Khan was very much interested in my idea of Muslims participating at corporate level, because unfortunately at the corporate level Muslims are nowhere. Out of 1,000 listed companies, there are only 10 to 12 Muslim companies. So we are failing at the economic front in a big way, and unless we economically empower ourselves, we cannot succeed at the political level as well as the education level, because education too has now become totally industrialized. We are not able to establish good educational institutions also. So we have to make a combined effort, and we have to learn the art of a coordinated effort at the national level. And I used to discuss a lot with Mr. K. Rahman Khan during around between 2011 to 2017, and we were actually planning that there should be a body at the national level, at a coordinating body at the international level, which should be able to coordinate all these efforts. But unfortunately, we could not develop it now. And in the future, hopefully, some other people, and Mr. K. Rahman Khan is still, I think, the best man who can take up this cause. And he is trying in his own way. We had started Masjid One movement recently, but unfortunately, the man who was the main person doing, he has become badly affected by COVID. And so we have to think, we have to plan a nationwide movement which can integrate all the Muslim organizations in a way that we do not appear to become an enemy of others. We have to learn the art of living with other communities, and we have to learn how we can engage with others, and how we should try to win the support of the majority of Indians, not just majority of Muslims. Only that way we can succeed.
So, Mr. Khan, you have focused on you're focusing on your new book, in which you're focusing on the way forward for the Muslim. So, what are the points you think are necessary? There are minimum requirements for the community to become independent.
See, my advice and sincere advice to the community and community: give up the minority syndrome. And do not expect any special favor as a minority from the government. Number two, remember that the Constitution of India does not provide any special favor for or special privileges for religious minority except the right to establish education institution of their choice. That right is available to the linguistic minorities also. Not to imagine that you are an exclusive constitutional right. Seek your fundamental rights as any other citizens. You are equally entitled to all these rights. Remove the impression that Muslims are appeased or that they have special rights. Do not become a victim of vote bank politics. If as a result of this, it means that for a short time, Muslims may get little or no representation in the parliament and in the state assembly, it does not matter. This is any case not going to make any difference, as whatever representation is available at present is a symbolic and unassertive. Establish an apex level organization that is representative in character, whose purpose would be to help make Muslims self-reliant. No interreligious affairs should be discussed in that forum. The body should concentrate only on social, education, economic issues of the Muslims of India. Seek to empower Muslim. It should not have any religious agenda. A national fund should be created for pursuing the objectives of the organization. A planning board should be constituted, draw the 10-year plan for the Muslim education, economic and social empowerment apart from the political thinking or politics. These are my simple suggestions for the community.
So you have used your comparative advantage as your work in organization, seeing everything. You've organized your thought in a very, long-term plan. So inshallah, if this thing happens, we may as a...
It is people may say it is I'm in a dreamland, but this is, if we achieve this, inshallah, our future is our future. I mean, this is for the future.
So this was a wonderful discussion. What I've gathered from it is that Muslims should become, apart from their constitutional rights from the state and nation as an entity, they should also concentrate on developing their own institutions and structures which can concentrate on raising issues, creating economic opportunities, creating empowerment of Muslim within the Islamic framework, the Muslim women, the Muslim men. So all these things, and I think I would later also, if I get a chance to have a one-to-one interview with Mr. Rahman Khan and Mr. Javed Jamil to engage with this issue, in a more elaborate way from his perspective. Because three people sitting together, sometimes a lot of things which Mr. Rahman Khan must be thinking to, articulate, Mr. Jamil may be thinking to articulate. Sometimes it becomes, the three-way kind of a thing. So, but what is interesting is that we should focus on finding our own position also. Mr. Rahman Khans are also necessary, Mr. Owaisis are also necessary, Jamiyats, Jamaats are also necessary, but there should be a minimum common agenda. Minimum common ground based on the intersection of society, politics and economics, at least, where people can come together and raise issues. So thank you, Mr. Khan, for this lovely and insightful interview, and Dr. Javed Jamil. And inshallah, we will continue this endeavor, and we will certainly in future try to engage with you with more of people from my age group. Thank you, sir.